traces, Premier, there are now numerous examples of somebody coming into contact with a COVID-positive case and New South Wales Health not contacting them for upwards of a week or so, but the business involved contacting them or other people contacting them. Are we now at the point where we're relying effectively on businesses and citizen contact traces, for instance, to do the job, to ease the strain?
No. Well, obviously, when we get to 70% double dose, we will be in a transition as to how we do a lot of things, including our contact tracing. When you have the vast majority of your adult population vaccinated, it does mean you do things differently, whether it's our quarantine system, whether it's contact tracing, and in the future, whether it's how we test. And in many places around the world who have done reasonably well in dealing with Delta, you get to a stage where you have that self-monitoring as well. We're not at that stage yet, but let me assure you that our contact tracers are on the job. They're doing incredibly well given the circumstances. And again, when you look at the number of cases we have and how many days we are into the pandemic or this outbreak, and relative to other states, I think in comparison, given the course of time, people will appreciate all the systems that we've put in place to deal with what we have given our population.
But just with that pressure, do we need to rely on some businesses and other people to actually help out the contact tracers?
Can I ask everybody to continue to following the health experts and the health advice? But what we are seeing still is, unfortunately, and without giving away anybody's private circumstances, some people who are very sick aren't even getting a test until right the last minute. And then it's almost too late by the time they get to hospital to treat them. So I do say to everybody, the job of our contact tracers is made easier if people get tested as soon as they think they may have been exposed, and that they respond to the health advice. We often have people who are contacted, depending on your circumstances, on a daily basis or every couple of days. Especially when there's vulnerable people involved. Our hospital care is outstanding, especially compared to other parts of the world. So I just ask people to be patient, but also to follow the health advice. There are always exceptions. In a population of 8 million, you're always going to have situations where there's an exception. But the vast majority of cases, the vast majority of the way we do things is extremely positive and efficient. But there'll always be shortfalls because of the system and the nature of it. And we also do rely on people to, first of all, tell us everything they know. And second of all, to remember everything they know. And that can be a challenge. But I just want to assure people how our systems are holding up, how we've put planning in place for a long time. We know this will be the most difficult period of time for all of our frontline health workers. And for many of them, they're already feeling it. If you work in a hospital in southwestern or Western Sydney, you will already be feeling what many other health workers across the state will feel in the next couple of weeks. And so our job, as part of our plan, is to share the burden as much as we can, to redeploy the staff that have been trained up to work in intensive care units, to reconfigure some of our hospitals and hospital wards. I'll have more to say about this next week, but I'm really keen to have the clinicians themselves and our experts themselves explain this rather than coming from a politician, to give everybody the degree of comfort I have. I'm not suggesting there won't be bad days. I'm not suggesting there won't be examples where people feel let down. But let's face it, that happens even when the system isn't in a pandemic. We have one of the best health systems in the world, but no system is perfect, and every system is subject to a number of challenges. So I'm not suggesting it's going to be rosy by any stretch, but I want to, as much as possible, warn people about what to expect in the next few weeks, but also say to people we're expecting it and not to be concerned, that it's not to be concerned to the extent that we're anticipating this, we've been planning for it, and so many good people. I mean, my hats off to health workers who work with COVID patients every day and then go home to their families. Now, if that's not sacrifice, if that's not being a hero, I don't know what is. And I also want to give a shout out to our ambulance and paramedics. Anytime they're called out now to a home, they may not know if that home's been exposed or not, and they're putting themselves on the line every day. But even ambulance and paramedics will have different roles. They may be asked to take patients to different locations based on where we're spreading the load. So the whole system is kicking into the next gear, and I appreciate there'll be some very difficult days beyond what we've experienced, but then there's also opportunities for us to look positively at the future and know that this is, the efforts people are going to in the next few weeks is the result of years and years of planning, years of people putting literally, there's sacrifices on the line to make sure they deliver great care to those who need it.
About contact tracing. We have heard reports that the plan is to scale back on the contact tracing and rely on the app. I mean, could you explain a little bit the rationale behind that? And also, is there a danger that we might see, as they did in the UK, a kind of pingdemic with thousands upon thousands of people being asked to isolate?
Yeah, just to be clear, we are starting to present what our systems will look like once we get to 70% double dose vaccination. So we have to appreciate that when you have the vast majority of your adult population vaccinated, the way you do things automatically changes, because the case numbers will be up, will be higher, but the rate of hospitalisation will be much lower. And it means you focus your attention on different parts of the system. You focus your attention on keeping people out of hospital. And therefore, the way you do things changes. And obviously, if you're a fully vaccinated Australian coming back home, there is no reason why, when the vast majority of us are vaccinated in the community, there is no reason why you can't home quarantine, we can't do things differently. At the moment, as you all know, we have thousands and thousands of health staff and police staff and ADF busy with the hotel quarantine system, when in fact we have only a handful of cases in overseas travellers with the virus, and yet significantly more in the community. So it stands to reason that you start, once you have a safe rate of vaccination in the adult population, you start to transition. So whether it's contact tracing, where there'll be better use of technology, whether it's the quarantine system, whether it's the way in which we treat our intensive care patients during the peak of hospitalisation, things will be done differently. It doesn't mean the system isn't able to take care of people, or it doesn't mean people need to worry as much as perhaps some might suggest. But what it does mean is we have to be open to living with COVID and what that means into the future, because what we're doing now is not sustainable. We can't be in lockdown forever. We can't have the number of people dedicated to the hotel quarantine system in that way forever. So things are shifting in a good way, because we can see what life looks like when we're living with Delta. It's not like the way we're living now.
Just on the contact.
I'll come around.